tonight's format, we're pretty laid back, for those of you who haven't been to these before, so I encourage you to jump in and ask additional questions if you have them as we're kind of going through our talk. This really is meant to be a group discussion where we're all getting some valuable information as founders, as investors, as entrepreneurs as well. So tonight we have with us, I'm sure many of you, almost all of you know Fabrice. But his history is really quite phenomenal in the entrepreneurial space. Founder of multiple companies, 10 companies, 3 of which he was the CEO, and 4 of which he was the CEO. Of note, Auckland, which was an auction website, Zingy, which was a mobile media startup, and OLX, which was a free classified advertising website. On top of that, you have over 200?
400 investments.
400 investments. I mean, the name of the investments just go on in terms of successful, incredibly successful companies. So they can name a few: Alibaba, Airbnb, FanDuel, and Palantir. Palantir also fits in. Yeah, awesome. Fantastic. So it seems like you've been incredibly busy. But I'd love to kind of bring it back to the start. When you first graduated from Windeln, what was that first step that you took? Was it a step into the entrepreneurial world? If it wasn't, what was your first step into the entrepreneurial world?
I got Princeton, I was ready as a massive tech nerd. In 1984, when I was 10, I got my first PC. And it was like love at first sight, so I immediately started coding and like building BBSs. And you can imagine how cool I was in the 1980s, like building built-in board services, which is like the ancestor of the internet, where people dialed in France in the 1980s. So I got to Princeton knowing I wanted to be a tech nerd. Actually, my role models growing up were Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. It was clear that this was something I wanted to do. And in a way, we got really lucky because in 1993, so as a sophomore, they started putting like the T1 lines, like direct and high-speed internet in our rooms, while everyone else in the world was stuck with like 9600 baud modems, like super high-speed internet, amazing environment. The Princeton at the time was not supportive of entrepreneurial endeavors. So I came from France. In fact, I barely spoke English when I got to Princeton. And I needed to pay for college, so I worked 3 jobs like many of you guys did. And I built my first company exporting computer to the US here. And Princeton actually tried to shut me down because they were like, by running a for-profit startup on campus, you're putting your non-for-profit status at risk. So it was like a massive battle with them to actually be able to run my first startup, which actually paid for college. I was like, well, if I'm going to be here, I need to make money. And upon graduating, like it was reasonably obvious that it was a bubble. Like 1995, Netscape went public, like no revenues, like multi-billion valuation. Yahoo was created, Amazon was created, and most people that were looking at that time period knew it was a bubble. The thing is, I was 21. I was extremely socially shy and awkward. And I'm like, okay, if I create a startup, most likely I'm not going to be able to raise. I've never managed anymore. I'm going to fail. I mean, I built my little tiny sole proprietorship, and it's okay unless like whatever, a couple $100K or revenue, like 50K profits from being in college, but it's not a real business. I need to learn business, and Princeton teaches you a lot of things, but it teaches you how to learn. It doesn't teach you business. And in fact, when you get into business, you need to write these you need to speak business talk, and you write these PowerPoints. It's quite essentially the opposite of what you learn in Princeton. Where in Princeton, you write these flowery sentences with long introductions and like a conclusion at the end after a 20-page essay. In business, what the first thing you teach you at McKinsey is like conclusion up front, one idea per page, 3 bullet points, sentences of 7 words with an action verb in the present tense in the middle. It's like literally the opposite form of writing. And so it's like, should I go to McKinsey? Should I join Goldman? Or should I join a startup or build a startup? In hindsight, and knowing that I wanted to be a tech entrepreneur, so it was like clear I wanted to be in the entrepreneurial journey. In hindsight, I think any of these paths would have been great. Would have learned a lot, and as a founder, I would have probably failed, but those were interesting life lessons. And at a startup, I would have learned a lot of things, given that you can essentially do as much as you can and want. But I chose McKinsey. The smartest people that I knew got to McKinsey. It seemed like an interesting place to be, and frankly, they taught me everything I needed to learn. I came out of Princeton super shy, awkward, and quiet, and I didn't know how to work with teams. I lacked emotional intelligence and empathy, and McKinsey invests in you. They teach you they signed me up for oral and written communication skills workshops or public speaking workshops, and so it was amazing. And I actually thought I would go to McKinsey and miss the bubble. And lo and behold, 2 years in, the bubble was still going strong, and I'm like, okay, I'm learning what I need to learn. Let's go and build a startup. So I left McKinsey to build my first startup when I was 23, back in 1998.
Awesome. What was that first startup that you built?
I had a lot of ideas. The problem is when you're 23 and kind of penniless and not really connected to the venture world, a lot of things there are a lot of constraints. So the first thing I wanted to build was an internet bank. That was I wanted to build, I mostly worked in financial institutions of the user experience is broken, the business model is broken, a lot of things they do to make money. How about we just do, deposits that are easy to access to make money on ATM fees and you do factoring on the loan side on the back end, because those are low risk, high margin businesses and nothing else. So I started looking at what does it take to go and build that type of business? And so I went to so you have to go to the Federal Reserve, you get a banking license, and they're like, no problem. It's easy, just deposit $10 million in the Federal Reserve, and we can start getting you start going on the application process. So I'm like, okay, maybe a somewhat less capital efficient idea might be better. And a lot of the ideas, especially back in '98, required so much capital and expertise. If you want to build Amazon, you need massive supply chain management, logistics, inventory, billions of dollars. So I needed to find ideas that didn't need all that, given the constraints. And as an economist, I like building or bringing liquidity and transparency to opaque and fragmented businesses. And kind of randomly, I fell to the eBay side. I was like, oh my god, this is genius. Lacking creativity at that time, you know what? I'll just take that idea and I'll bring it to Europe. And that was the first idea. I sold everything I had. I moved to Europe and went to build Auckland, which is eBay for France and Southern Europe.
So in building Auckland, what were some early influences that really formed, I guess, the entrepreneur we are today?
Well, it's interesting because I got there and I expected it would be relatively easy to raise money, because in the US, the bubble was really inflated. The internet had not yet really reached Europe, and so you learned as when you're a founder, you're always raising money essentially. So I started raising money and being rejected and rejected and rejected. So you learn to deal with rejection rather effectively. And at that time, I was still super shy. I never had a girlfriend, so I had not dealt with rejection from girls yet. So it was actually useful ultimately for also how to deal with rejection from girls, because it allowed me to get over fear of rejection from girls. Having been rejected by so many VCs, I'm like, oh, it's the exact same thing. Just ask enough, someone's bound to say yes. Now, seeing that contrast of the world where it was impossible to raise money, no one took a 23-year-old seriously, to once the site was live and we're operating and essentially engineered a lot of PR, because no one was putting in the effort. No one was actually thinking through how to build these businesses. People had launched auction sites before, but no one had thought through what is the key success factor. And I identified, okay, we need to create a critical mass of buyers and sellers in every single geography, in every single category, kind of duplicate the eBay org chart. We had a category manager for points with stamps that we're doing thoughtful business building skills that no one else had done. So all of a sudden, the bubble did inflate, and it's funny, all the people that were not even being returning my calls before, because it was 23-year-old, now 24, and they're begging to invest in the company. And so it gives you a sense of perspective. It also keeps you cool when it prevents things from going to your head too quickly. But I was completely inexperienced, and I made countless mistakes. I was 24, and eBay offered to buy us for $20 million. I would have made $15 million. I was not thinking of money. I was thinking let's go and build and conquer the world. And I didn't realize how much money that really was. Making $15 million when you're 24 is a shit ton of money. It changes your life. And and I was living on the couch of the office on $2 a day. I didn't have any money in my bank account. It didn't even occur to me that this is actually real money and it's a lot. And I just didn't even think about it. I said, no, of course not. We're building. We're going to conquer the world.
Yeah.
So you learn a few lessons along the way, because it's actually really hard to make that type of money. It's also really easy to lose. And then in signing the first deals with VCs, I selected VCs based on when you're picking a VC, you're essentially getting married. they're on your board, they're going to be with you in good times and bad times, maybe more importantly bad times. And I just picked the guy who offered the most money at the highest valuation, which probably is what most first-time entrepreneurs do. Even though I didn't really get along with him, more than he understood what I was doing. And it turned out to be very detrimental much later when actually eBay came back and said, okay, now we'll buy you for 300. I said, of course, at that price, I might be crazy, but not that crazy. And he didn't care. He didn't want to sell to anyone at any price, nor did I have, and I had not negotiated something called a drag, which allows me to force a sale because I didn't even know what a drag was. And I just assumed that my lawyers would have negotiated well on my behalf a stock purchase agreement. Not that I knew what a stock purchase agreement was, but of course, lawyers didn't take it seriously back then. And so they did not, because it was like a junior associate at a top law firm. But top law firm, the logo doesn't mean anything. It's the people you work with that matters. And so if you're being Sequoia as your VC, it doesn't matter if it's Sequoia. Who is that partner? Do you like them? Are they in your car? And the same thing with the law firm. You may have craft, but it's the person you work with that matters. And so ultimately, didn't sell to them $3 million because the idiot VC didn't want to sell. Bubble blew, lost everything, and started back from scratch.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because I was like, okay, the internet is dead. It's never going to come back, clearly. What do I do now? So I went through this long soul-searching period where I just wrote myself a long email laying out all the options. Do I go back to business school, or do I go to school? Do I go back to McKinsey? Do I run new media for a media company? And I'm like, I started this because I like building companies. I like building something out of nothing. I like being an entrepreneur. It's no longer going to be as big, as meaningful, and as successful, but it's what I really want to do. So let's go back and do it.
Yeah.
And started again in 2001. Yeah, that was it.
And so along this journey with the first company, was it just you, or did you have a founding team with you building?
I had a technical co-founder that I hired, but frankly, it was more of a I'm probably not the prototypical founder. I actually like dictatorship because it leads to more effective decision making, or hopefully somewhat enlightened dictatorship. So I've had co-founders, but I typically have the vast majority. This way we can make decisions quickly.
Yeah. And have there been people that you've continued to work with along the way?
Oh yeah. I mean, the easiest way to recruit is frankly to, over the years, you keep the best people. So, my VP of marketing for my first company 20 years ago is still the venture partner taking care of all the marketing at all the companies we invested in or built today. My CFO from Ziggy in 2001 is my CFO today. Absolutely, I've kept working with the very best people for the last 20 years, and I've kept adding more along the way. So yeah absolutely.
Wow, incredible. Now, I know this question may be impossible to answer as an entrepreneur, but now, moving forward to today, what does a typical year look like when you're kind of planning out the year ahead?
So I decided to create a structure where I'd like to be a month in New York where it's super busy. It's like 12 meetings a day, and I do like 30 to 45-minute meetings, and I do them just back to back to optimize the number of meetings I can take and efficiency of throughput of thought. I have like events every evening and speeches, and I organize intellectual salons. And so New York is like a haven of like intellectual, social, artistic endeavors, and it's crazy busy. The problem is when you're so busy and you're working like insane hours, you're not actually thinking. You're doing, but you're not thinking. And so I try to balance that when I take a month where I'm still working during the day with like the usual meetings, because I'm no longer in person, usually by Skype or Zoom. But then the evenings where there's nothing planned, like I'm not going on dates, I'm not playing, I'm playing tennis, I'm kite surfing, and then I'm reading, I'm writing, and I'm thinking. And so I do month in, a month out, month in, a month out. Typical year, we'll invest in 50 to 100 startups. I'll start de novo 1 or 2 startups, and I'll run one of those 2 typically as at least executive chairman. Sometimes leading products, sometimes CTO, sometimes CEO, depends on what the needs are. And which means the days are very varied in terms of like how they look. There's a lot of meetings, but like sometimes I'm meeting entrepreneurs or pitching me for money for their startups. Sometimes I'm meeting portfolio companies who want advice or help with raising the next round. Sometimes I'm meeting other VCs with whom we share a lot of deal flows or ideas. And sometimes I'm meeting the employees of companies that we're currently building, or the companies, and then we have the brainstorms for the ideas that we're going to build next year. So at every point in time, we have a running list of like what things should exist in the world, in the universe that are not currently existing, what existing enterprises should be disrupted, what are categories where the net promoter score of the existing incumbents is low, where the economics are bad, where we can create something better. And so we're trying to think through, okay, what should we build? And we're at the very beginning. We're like, if you read Jeff Bezos' letter to shareholders from 1997, it explains they were a day one company, and today, in 2018, we're still day one. We're at the very beginning of the tech revolution. 10% of commerce has gone online. It's going to go to much more than that. We haven't disrupted education, that's 10% of GDP. Healthcare, that's 20% of GDP, or less than that. Public services, writ large around the world, which is like 30 to 57.8% of GDP for France. And it's true, like category by category, we're at the very beginning. When people tell you everything's been invented, there's nothing left to be done, they're completely wrong. We're going to have $200 billion companies that are going to emerge out of nothing in the next decade, probably 10 billion plus other companies that are going to emerge, and like 100 billion plus other companies. So there's lots to be done.
Yeah. So when looking at those companies to invest in, what do you typically look for?
So I have two things. One is, in general, I have like current investment thesis. Like, what are the things, the trends that I believe in that are interesting, and therefore let's try to invest in companies that are in line with those trends, and I can talk about what those are for us right now. And then 3 types of high-level heuristics. Do we like the team, which is a gauge of like intelligence, passion, threat, tenacity, ability to deal with conflict. 2, do we like the deal terms, and we're rather price sensitive, which means in the back of my mind, I have a pricing model as to, given the traction, the margins, the business, et cetera, what is a fair valuation of the stage of the company relative to the amount they're raising? And 3, do I like the business? And do I like the business as 9 underlying heuristics in terms of like unit economics, and I'm super unit economic driven, total addressable market size, capital efficiency, business model, scalability, risk of margin compression, business deviation, et cetera. So it's not quite checklisty, though there are heuristics to it, but the genius is then making sure that all the parts fit. But I want all 3. I need to love the team, love the business, love the deal terms. I don't like all 3. We'll invest. And we decide, we're not like those GCs, because we'll decide maximum 2 1-hour meetings. So in 2 weeks max, you get a yes or no. Often in the meeting, if I like you enough, I'll say, okay, we're in, or we're not. And most often, of course, we're not. We get 100 deals a week, and we invest in 1 to 2 weeks. So I would say 98.5% rejection rate.
And so in your head, are you kind of going through that matrix of the things that you're turning out? What about your teammates? Are they actually filling in an Excel spreadsheet for those?
Yeah, we have a standard reporting mechanism where everyone needs to, for each 1-hour discussion they have with the startup, they need to fill in the grid with like everything that I'm looking for, and the recommendation.
Right.
Then every Tuesday from 10 to 12, every team member is going to talk with the companies they talk to with their recommendation. We're going to debate it. Some I will have met directly, and I will have right decided yes or no. The ones then while listening to the recommendation, I'll be challenged, I may push. Some of them I'll take calls, and then on the basis of that second call, we'll invest. Sometimes I'll just say yes to the recommendation and invest.
Yeah. Cool. So then the companies that you are managing, you're saying you manage 1 to 2?
No, at any given year, I usually manage 1, and then I'm still on the board of the 1 from the year before.
Gotcha. Okay. So for the one that you're directly managing, how do you prioritize on a weekly basis for those companies, and also be able to view and meet with all these additional companies that you're investing in?
Yeah, so the investing side currently is structured in a way that it doesn't take me much more than 20 hours a week. Because we have a full team, we have 2 principals, I have an investment partner, we have an associate, and then we have 4 apprentices. So every year I go to the top business schools. I go to Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Columbia, and Wharton. We interview the top 250 intramural-minded first years, and we teach them venture. So during the summer and during their second year, for full-time in the summer, and 10, 15 hours, 10, 20 hours a week during the second year, we teach them all the heuristics. They're going to take calls, they're going to filter deals. Because the idea is when they graduate, we will build a company together. They'll have 65% of the equity, we'll have 35% in exchange for $750K, and we'll commit the next $2 million, and I'll be the co-founder and executive chairman. And so that's the way we build, and we keep building every year 1 or 2 startups. It's our startup studio model that it's not incredibly scalable because we're limited to my partner and I as like co-founders by, 1 a year each, so that's 2 years. But we've been doing maybe 1.5 on average.
Yeah.
But the investing side, because of the 100 deals come in, we talk maybe 50, but the team talks most of them. And so then we have a 2-hour weekly investment call, plus a bunch of emails, and I'll take another 10 hours worth of calls. And so the investment side is only taking me 20 hours. And that means a lot of hours to go through other things, like think through new ideas or help work on the companies that we're building today.
Mm-hmm. But do you have a process with those companies to make sure that you are tracking and scaling?
Oh yeah. Basically, so everything's reasonably process oriented. So for the new ideas we come up with, every 2 weeks we evaluate 3 ideas and we decide whether or not to go further. And if we go further, we'll go from like 3-4 pages to actually doing consumer interviews on the supply and demand side, to actually doing unit testing and landing pages, and I'm trying to send basic unit economics, to then pulling the trigger on the companies we're building. Same thing. Every 2 weeks we make sure we do a check-in point where what have we accomplished and what are the KPIs that we're trying to hit. In the early days, it's really basic stuff like we need to recruit a CTO, we need to recruit a BD product, we need to build a back-end team, and my role there is more recruiting, evaluation. It also depends on the companies we're building. Last year, the company and the CEO didn't need me that much because he actually had product experience. But often the CEOs I work with don't have product experience, and then essentially I become VP product CTO year 1.
Yep. Great. Okay, so now moving forward clearly to today, as long as we're already there, but you mentioned in a previous interview that I saw that you kind of been shedding some material items. Do you mind explaining that a little bit more?
Well, in 2013, in many ways, I was on top of the world. I was running a company called OLX. We had 3,000 employees in 50 countries. We're doing 300 million users a month. And it was the leading classified site. Imagine what Craigslist should be, a mobile version of Craigslist that doesn't have spam, scam, prostitution, and murders and all those bad things. And so it's really a platform for buying and selling everything and services in emerging markets. And we're the leaders in India and Brazil and Pakistan and Russia and Ukraine, all these markets. And in many ways you think, if you're in that position where you're running a 3,000 person employee company, and where everything you do is statistically significant. One thing that being a tech entrepreneur teaches you in a way is humility, because you're wrong so many times. So many things you do fail. You ask for money and people say no. You try, you have a product idea, you try and it fails dismally. So everything is multivariate testing. And when you have a platform with 300 million unique visitors a month, everything you do is statistically significant. And so you realize that the disruptive product change is the sum total of 1% improvement is not 1,000 times over. So it's on top of the world, running this massive platform, the company is doing super well, and all the trappings of success of a beautiful house in Bedford, a beautiful penthouse in Oregon City, a McLaren race car, and all that stuff. And I decided to go back to first principles, and it's easy for me to keep doing something because I'm a happy guy. By default, I'm happy. Whether I'm bankrupt or not, I've always been happy. And I'm am I as satisfied as I could be? And I realized I didn't love being CEO of OLX anymore because we were part of a publicly traded company. The job on a day-to-day basis was no longer let's come up with these crazy product ideas and brainstorm and figure out and solve problems. It was really we need to hit the quarterly numbers for the quarterly budget, and we need to update the quarterly budget. Better hit those numbers. It's not that much fun. And even though the people that bought us were super aggressive and gave us a lot of money, and that was fun for a while, after a while I was maybe I should start again from scratch. And at the same time, I didn't like the way the nature of friendship changes as you get older. People get married, get jobs, they have kids, and when I was at McKinsey, I would see my friends at least 5 times a week, maybe 7 times a week, and we spent all the time reading the world and ping pong, foosball, and seem to have the luxury of time. And that seems to evaporate. And when you own things, they kind of own you. They take time. If you're a country house, you go there because you have it. You're spending so much time on it, and so you're doing some cost fallacy. You're not doing what would maximize my utility at any given point in time. And when I was seeing my friends, it was like, oh, I'd see them every 6 weeks, and instead of being like, let's remake the world, it was like, oh, in the last 6 weeks since I saw you, the biographical update of like, oh, I did this, my husband did that, so that it's okay, but it's not as meaningful. I'm like, you know what? How about I restart from scratch? I give up the company, I leave as CEO, and I figure out what I want to do next. And I give up all my material possessions. I go down to 50 items, and I go couch surfing at my friends' couches. If I'm sleeping in their couch, they won't have much choice but to hang out with me. So it is true that when you free up the possession, you eliminate the possessions, it becomes interesting because all of a sudden it's like, oh, how much time would I actually want to spend at that place where I have a country house? And the answer ends up being a lot lower number than when you have it. And how much do I really want to, where do I, if I can be anywhere tonight and have all the options of people I can meet, who do I want to meet? And it forces you to ask questions that you take by default. Once you have the default path, you just do it just because. Now, the strategy of couch surfing my friends' couches, that was a massive disaster. I think Benjamin Franklin once said, a house gets like fish, starts smelling after 3 days. I mean, the problem is embedding myself in their life, where all of a sudden I'm like, okay, let's hang out and like talk philosophy. And my vision was like, oh, we're gonna play tennis from 8 to 10 p.m. and we're gonna have dinner, and then maybe we'll talk around a glass of wine from midnight to 2 a.m. And that's great. And I'm reasonably high energy, as you guys can probably tell at this point. And most people, not necessarily nearly as much, and they also have lives where they have structure, like they need to bring their kids to school, they need to be up in the morning, they have to do the homework, and they want to be in bed way earlier than I do. So that didn't work. So I kept iterating on the model. Ultimately found a way that the model that worked for me. I was still down at 50 possessions, and frankly, probably more than that. I mean, toiletries says 1 possession set. It's more than 50 if you include really unit count level. And I was living in hotels and Airbnbs, and it freed up a huge amount of time. And to reconnect with my friends, I would basically invite all of them at a place that, again, not what would have been my ideal choice, or my ideal choice vacation is let's go to a completely remote area at a period that is not during school year. The school vacation, it's a lot cheaper, it's a lot more available, et cetera. But again, to reconnect with friends, so like, okay, let's go to a place that's easy to get to, that's inexpensive, where you can organize activities with kids, et cetera. So now I do that like twice a year with all my friends, kind of in a rotation, and that works really well. I've come back, sadly, from the no possessions at all thing. I mean, I still don't have a car, country house, et cetera, but I do have an apartment in the city. Most of it is regulation. Like, we've created zoning law where we've limited supply of housing, and so the occupancy rates in New York on hotels is like through the roof, like 99%. They've shut down all the high-end Airbnbs. So if I go to Airbnb or Booking.com and I'm like, I want to stay at this hotel for 6 weeks, it's just impossible. And so I in 2015, with the U.S. economy, the New York economy doing so well, I found myself moving rooms every 3 days and moving Airbnb every 3 days. And that created its own transaction costs. Okay, that's not ideal either. Yeah. So I got an apartment in the Lower East Side. I mean, it's still minimalist in the sense that I for a long time I just had a mattress on the floor, and so people would come over and like, does anyone actually live here? But it has a little bit more than that, like still nothing, like nowhere, et cetera. So pleased to say, but it's actually been useful because it's allowed me to restart. I like organizing these intellectual salons where I bring like people from academia and people from just interesting people to talk about everything and anything. Life in a post-singularity world, religion in 2100, the ethics, morality of torture, how to deal with the refugee crisis. I mean, it's total intellectual masturbation. There's nothing practical that comes out of it, but it's interesting. And I found that if you want to invite semi-public intellectuals, they may consider themselves public intellectuals, but most massive may not recognize them in the street. They actually will not come to a dinner in a public restaurant, and also the noise and the acoustics are not ideal. So I found this kind of model where I own probably sub 100 possessions, but one of those is an apartment in the city, and that works pretty well. But yeah, being asset light is good. Like things take time. Like whatever electricity fails, there's a leak. I mean, like they they're distracting and they're not value adding. And ultimately in life, experiences, friendships are more interesting than like things.
Great, so now we'll do a quick rapid fire. We're going to try this out. I've never done the rapid fire before.
Sure.
It should be fun. So we'll go through about 9 questions. So what do you do when you first wake up in the morning? Typically, if you have a routine.
I wake up rather late. I probably wake up at 9. Yeah, I'll just shower, get dressed, go to the office.
Okay.
That's basically it. Nothing, and I don't eat breakfast.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
It's Kellogg that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It's not, a nutritionist. It's Mr. Kellogg.
What's one book that you would recommend as one of your favorite books? One for pleasure, one for just entrepreneurship?
Not sure there are any books on entrepreneurship. I read a lot. I read 100 books a year. I love reading, but I read everything and anything. And of the 100 books a year, I will immediately admit that like maybe 40 of those are like sci-fi soap operas that most people probably would not appreciate. In the most mind-boggling book I've read in the last 5 years, probably *Sapiens*, in terms of like where because it's so encompassing of like where do we come from, who are we, and where are we going. And it's interesting when you realize that all these things we care about are often like mental constructs. Like there's no such thing as a country or a border or a currency. These are things that we humans invented and attach value to. And also how we got from being a nomadic society to basically being domesticated by we is really interesting in that transition. So *Sapiens* I think is mind-boggling and interesting. Just pure curiosity and philosophical perspective. As an introductory books, not very many I would recommend, maybe 0 to 1 Peter Thiel, but yeah, not many others. But books I can to recommend, I have hundreds.
Nice.
Yeah.
Who's one person that you look up to?
I haven't had real mentors in life. I've had virtual mentors, like people that I looked up to, like Octavian Augustus or Alexander Hamilton or Mandela, like real role models, but they didn't know I existed or were not alive. I have to think as to who that would be today. Like most people it's interesting. Like if you ask most people, like who's the most inspiring person of your time, yeah, I think most introverts say, "Oh, it's Elon Musk." And what's interesting is when I think about like how many people, and I think what he's doing is wonderful, by the way, but I see him as an accelerator of trends that will probably happen, maybe makes them happen sooner. But like how many people are going to go have gone to space in SpaceX? The last years it's existed. The answer is 0. Really. How many people are going to go in space in SpaceX in the last 5 years, a decade? I don't know, 50, 100, 1,000. And so in terms of like how many lives are you actually touching, it's much smaller number than you think. The people that have had the most impact on the world, probably Bill Gates through the centralization of software, which led to the computer revolution, and then smartphones were large, right? Like the fact that now, if you're you could be a hunter-gatherer and a Maasai warrior in Tanzania, and you have in your phone more access to communications than the president of the U.S. like 20 years earlier, right? Like you have the sum total of the world's knowledge in your pocket at any point in time, and we take it for granted that it's like it's mind-boggling that we have like this free global instant communications device, which is also like an information system where you have access to all the world's knowledge instantaneously, and that is so much more in a way disruptive and meaningful. And yet, I'm not sure who the unsung heroes that a lot of this happened are, but there's many because it started from in networking here, so maybe the Met House of the world, et cetera, but it came from many. And so there's not one role model that say, this is it. But in terms of people of the past, you're like, how has that ever happened to them?
Great. So what is your favorite company that you started?
Clearly OLX. Because OLX it's just a platform. Like we have millions of people that make a living on it. We have 300 million users a month in countries like India and Pakistan, or Nigeria, or Kenya, or Brazil, and in these countries, no one was focusing on them. And it changes the lives of people. We were getting every day like 20,000 love letters from users telling us like that we've changed their lives for the better. I remember my wife told us like, oh, I fall in love with my husband again because I was able to find a babysitter and go on dates with my husband again, or I needed a job and I was able to find a job to make rent and not be foreclosed on, or find the house of my dreams, and millions of people make a living off the site. And so it feels wonderful when like you have millions of people that are like so grateful for something you've built. Like it's not known in the U.S. But it's crazy. I would go to like Mozambique and like the president of the country would pick me up at the airport and like people would like take selfies with me in the street. Like I'm a much greater celebrity in Pakistan or India, than I here. I'm not known at all. But in India I'm a superstar. It's really funny.
Yeah.
But I'm clearly the one I'm proudest of because we've touched the lives of so many people. Where like there's 6-7% of the world's population that's like used the site and has that positive experiences. So clearly all is.
Great. Okay, last one. This is an easy one. What's your favorite spot on campus? Bring it back.
I'm actually kind of crazy at this. I had very few friends. I didn't really have extracurricular activities. All I was doing was like studying and like getting A pluses and like taking all these classes. And, I was like the highest GPA in class. And I was studying building computers and exporting them, and so I was in my room or in the library, and that's kind of it. I didn't join the eating club. I was really asocial,
which floor on the library?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I'm more in my room frankly than anywhere else.
Yeah.
And so,
So C floor.
Yeah. Princeton, I probably had a very atypical Princeton experience from me not being social, not doing, extracurricular activities, and just focusing on like A pluses and computers. And those are fantastic, interesting things in their own right at that time.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so we'll open it up for questions now.
So you do a lot of rejection. Tell us how you do rejection.
But I think most VCs are terrible at this. Like they'll lead people on because they're afraid of saying no. So they'll say, "Oh, this is interesting. Come back to us in the future." Like they never say no, and so you never know where you stand. I'm straight to the point of like, look, I like your business, but the economics are not quite there. Your CAC to LTV is for the first 18 months is maybe 1, and I would want to see 4x. And so come back to us in 18 months, or the valuation is too high. I mean, it's like direct and to the point. And we always tell people where they stand, whether we invest or don't invest, and we tell the point. So the only place or times where I coax it, or I'll still say no, but it's like if I don't think the team is up to par, I might say I'm not intrigued. I don't love the business opposed to say you suck. So that's the one time where I'm not completely transparent.
Just talk a little bit more about what you look forward to.
So I only have 1 hour to evaluate the team, and so I'm not, we don't do due diligence, better or worse, there's not much due diligence anyway. So in that 1 hour, I'm going to push really hard on the business, the unit economics, the customer acquisition strategy, and if they're on top of their numbers, they know the answer, they know the business, they're compelling and passionate, and they withstand like my pushing, then that's a form of both of knowledge and of grit, and some extent of passion. They have to be, sadly, it's better if they're extroverted and or salespeople and salesy because being an introvert requires selling all the time, requires raising money, and you're gonna, essentially when you're CEO, regardless of your personality type, you're selling. You're selling the press, you're selling the employees, you're selling business partners, you're selling investors. I need someone who's going to be able to raise money in the future. And so this charismatic ability to sell is sadly important. I mean, I wish it was not as important, but I realized that I backed really amazing founders, but they were not eloquent enough to be able to make people dream, and they weren't able to raise money. So they built okay businesses, but they didn't become big. Evaluating that, but in a 1 hour basis, you usually figure it out. At this point, I think a reasonable intuition.
How have the businesses that you've evaluated and not invested done compared to
Well, most of them have failed or non-existent, so, but some, of course, have gone on to do pretty well. But there are reasons I don't invest, I don't invest in businesses that don't have an existing business model or no idea how to do business model. So Facebook and efficiently would have passed because they thought they were going to make money for Google because they thought they were going to sell enterprise search to businesses. That was the original business model. I would have passed on these even though they've done extremely well. And I did pass on many amazing businesses. I could have invested in Zynga, like I think 1-3. And I'm like, I'm a gamer, but I don't like gaming. I think it's a hit-driven studio business where ultimately customer acquisition costs go up, development costs go up, it becomes hit-driven if you succeed. And all this proved out to be true after he had built a $10 billion business. And so, I was right, just completely wrong about the timing. Anytime you could build something very successful. So I passed. The number one of the main reasons I do pass on price, and some of the companies I price on, I love the founder, I love the business, but I think valuation is too high. Some of these I've done really well. But many of these, if I had invested across the entire portfolio, the ones I pass on price, I probably would have lost money, despite the fact maybe 10% to 20% of these have done really well, just because the returns from the others have been so much lower. Yeah.
So it seems like in the businesses that you started, you've taken an existing business models and developed them into them emerging.
That was in the early days, not so true. And frankly, OLX, I actually ideally would not have done that. OLX, I would have liked to kill prices in the US. It's been my mission to kill prices for 20 years. And, I'm a bit of a Don Quixote. Like, I'm attacking them in every vertical, in every industry, but not successfully because the power of network effects where everyone wires everywhere. So OLX actually was not meant to be an emerging markets company. It was, let's build a better mobile version of Craigslist, spam-free, spam-free, murder-free, prostitution-free for the world. And I launched in 100 countries, and I spent $50K in marketing in 100 countries, so 5 million total. It just so happens that the first 4 countries where it picked up were India, Pakistan, Portugal, and Brazil. And then from there, we expanded to others. But it wasn't the ambition to be big there. That was happenstance. Since then, so since 2013, the companies I've built have mostly been US companies. And so it's mostly business model innovation. Take an existing business and we reinvent the way it's done. So we built a lingerie e-commerce company called Stormy. So Victoria's Secret's at half the price if you want, which is a 70% gross margin business. It's doing really well, it's like $100 million revenues. We built a handbag marketplace called Rebag, which buys secondhand handbags and sells them. And so it's a marketplace for handbags. It's doing really well. Again, these models didn't exist before. We built a mobile first classified company in the US called Letgo, which again trying to attack Craigslist. We're building a blue-collar job site called Windeln. So all these are like de novo US innovations, more than international arbitrage. And frankly, if you can build a new business in the US, it's way better. You have 330 million really rich people that are early adopters who are dying to buy your products. Better to do it here than anywhere else. In fact, when it comes to internationalization, I tell US entrepreneurs, don't go global. If you're at 100 million in the US in revenues, it's easier to go from 100 to 200 in the US than 0 to 100 anywhere else. It's easier if you're at a billion stream, if you're at 10 billion stream. And so, unless you're doing user-generated content, in which case you do go global because it's easy, your Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever, it doesn't make sense. You're going to be worth more, you're going to be more, you can just buy everyone else if you want to go there. But going global is a distraction, it's painful, and it decreases probably winning your core market. Most of what we do, I'd say, is business model reinvention. So, or innovation. Take a category where there's incumbents, and you think through what differences you can to the model, what user experiences you can improve, and do that. So currently, the 3 pieces we have is a continued verticalization of the horizontal platforms. So you take Craigslist, eBay, Thumbtack, and Upwork, and you create better vertical user experience in all of these. So we're investors in a company called Reverb, which is a music instrument marketplace, like 5 million in sales. Or we're investors in Visa, which is a flooring marketplace. So you could go and get a floor in Thumbtack, but it's a huge pain in that you need to talk to like 50 of them, you need to negotiate a contract, then they do the work, and it's 3 months late, and they overcharge you 50%. Rent a visa, you just take a picture of the floor, these pretty square footage, they give you a price and you're done. Rent a visa picks its marketplace. They pick the supplier for you. So you don't need to have this interaction. They're responsible for the price and making sure it's done. So it's a much better user experience, and it's also a better business model because they take percentage of the cut. So that we're redoing in every vertical possible. And then the other big trend for us these days is B2B marketplaces. In the B2B world, you're still like pen, paper, Rolodex, email, and Excel and you don't even have online catalogs of what's available at what price. So we're invested in like logistics marketplaces like Flexport or petrochemical marketplaces or dump truck contractor marketplaces or like oil rig worker marketplaces and all these different categories. And so all of these are actually bringing innovation, liquidity, and transparency to opaque, fragmented markets. That's most of what we do these days.
I have a question about, so you were saying that you did launch in 100 different countries.
Yes.
In what situations do you think that is a good idea to kind of have the strategy of testing out multiple different countries? In what scenarios do you think it's best just to kind of try to research trends and go to markets?
Well, in most cases, I would say just do the US and call it that, but especially if your ideas is great for here. Other examples of business model innovation would be like, Open Door, the way they're attacking like real estate. But the reason we launched 100 countries is OLX. There's no logistics, there's no payments, there's no infrastructure, right? So it is user-generated content, even though the content wasn't listed. And so it was a question of we didn't know the competitive dynamic in any of the markets. We didn't know who the incumbents were. We didn't know how big they were. So it's a form of naivete. We're like, let's go. We think we build a better mousetrap. Let's go and see what the world thinks. And because these were winner-take-all businesses with like really powerful network effects, it took off at a few places. We got lucky at a few others, and that was it. But so for most things, I don't think that's a great approach. In the case of something I like UGC, I think it made more sense.
How about just for marketing overall?
Yeah.
So rather than say, okay, launching in specific markets, marketing campaign, is it smarter to just launch a marketing campaign more broadly, or is it smarter to get into?
It depends. No, but like marketing these days it's an Excel spreadsheet. It's all cash LTV. Like we'll do whether you do long tail, whether you do influencer marketing, whether you do TV, whether you're doing Facebook, whatever you're doing, you're tracking your CAC and I mean fully loaded CAC to a purchase to which you calculate what the net contribution margin for that purchase is, and based on really levels of recurrence, you look at what the LTV is. And it's all CAC to LTV that you're optimizing for. So in a way, it's like self-correcting. And as a result, you don't need to define the strategy. You do everything, and with very little money, you get statistically significant numbers, and you know exactly what to focus on. So it doesn't, even with $1,000, you can actually figure out whether a channel is good.
When you're building your B2B businesses and the marketplaces, in the early days, is there a side that you're more focused on, the supplier side or the buyer side? And then what strategies do you use to get like the demand on both sides?
So most companies in the marketplace space, it's easier to get supply than demand because there's a financial economic incentive for the suppliers to be on the platform. So when we're at OLX, we go to people like car dealers, real estate brokers, we're like, look, we don't have any demands, but we're free. How about you list there? And so often, just by making the argument of whatever, like, even if you're taking commission, you're free to list anyway. There's no risk. It's more visibility. Why not? You can convince a number of people to go there. So this supply side typically is an economic incentive. There are few marketplaces that are actually supply constrained. So Rebag, the handbag marketplace, is actually supply constrained. It's really hard to get like Birkin handbag that's used. Or in the art world, we build an art marketplace. That's also supply constrained. Right? Like I'd say, writ large, 95% of marketplaces, or it's simple to get demand. It's easy to get the supply. So focus on getting supply. In the B2B world, mostly will be through a Salesforce. The CEOs of the B2B companies we're typically people that have relationships in the industry and have worked in the industry, and they know, like, if you're building an oil well or a contract marketplace, typically I've worked with oil services companies and the oil majors in the past, and you know who those people are, and you got to build them. So you get the supply first. Demand depends on the B2B. It may also be sales team driven. But even if it's sales team driven, you're still doing CAC to LTV. You're still allocating, the percentage cost of the salary of your person to get that client over the time that it costs, and you compare that to the value of that of the customer, both from the supply and demand side, to make sure the economics work.
Is that over 18 months or lifetime?
Well, the thing is, if you don't make the economics work over 18 months, I'm not sure you're going to make it work for the lifetime. So ultimately, you should be doing CAC to LTV, but most of these companies, by the time we invested and build them, they have 4 months of existence. So it's not even real 18-month LTV. It's like projected based on 4 months of data. And sometimes they're correct, sometimes they're not, but at least the story needs to be compelling.
You said that one of the few industries that has been disrupted is healthcare.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you're seeing that interest you with regard to health insurance?
Sure.
Especially health insurance for the growing freelance population, where some of those intractable kind of problems there.
The problem, part of the problem with the health insurance in the business in the U.S. is actually structural. It's like the reason we have employer-paid health insurance, which by the way makes no sense because you should be the consumer of your own health, is because it's tax deductible. The reason it's tax deductible is because in World War II, there were wage controls, and the employers lobbied Congress to make it tax deductible so they can compete in benefits, which they could not compete in salaries. But after World War II ended, no one actually thought eliminating this idiocy. And as a result, the employers are now the purchasers of your health insurance as opposed to yourself, which has a whole bunch of like negative ramifications in terms of how you consume this. But there are a few interesting products in terms of like health insurance for contractors. I think what's more interesting these days in the health space, I don't know, we don't do much med tech, but in med tech, there's more and more diagnostic devices that are coming out that are rather cheap. Clearly, there's more and more data tracking. Like we're all wearing these fitness trackers these days, which today we're not using for health data. But like, if you have your heart rate on a regular basis, plus they're not currently calibrating trackers, but they could be. I think there's a lot of data as we capture that would in terms of like your sleep, your metabolism, et cetera, that I think will be useful in improving health outcomes. I mean, more importantly, and again, we don't do that much in health. I'm seeing in the lab. We're seeing a lot of things like we're printing. We're starting to print 3D print organs. And that's going to change. We're starting to create like undifferentiated plasma that's manufactured. So there's a lot of interesting things happening. Most of that on the biotech side is probably 5-10 years away from FDA approval. So unclear how it will change, but I think there's massive deflationary forces coming to be there. They're going to come to be born in the health space in general. Like diagnostics should be a lot cheaper and will be a lot cheaper in the future. And as more and more of health is going to, I guess, what is tech, costs are going to come down. Like it's like MRI machines. I mean, the first few ones cost like millions of dollars, took like low resolution and took 30 minutes. And today it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Moore's law continues to be applied there. So I'm actually reasonably optimistic that at somewhere we're going to hit an inflection point where actually it'll just because the underlying tech is becoming cheaper and cheaper, the provision of the health will become cheaper. Now, ideally, we should actually change also the ways reimbursed and paid for, so it doesn't have all these layers of intermediaries and complexity in the US market. That is all driven by tax law, by a law passed in like 1943, which makes no sense. But that I don't see changing anytime soon. Yeah.
What do you see the social impact space, and what advice you give to
The funny thing is, So I thought long and hard. Like I do a lot in philanthropy. I pay for the education of 10,000 kids in the Dominican Republic, and I help fund university people to give U.S. college degrees for free to people that merit. I buy like medical debt forgiven. I'd like $1 and ultimately, I suspect that what will have the most impact on the world is actually the investments that I make in tech, because the power of technology is that it's deflationary. It makes things cheaper. And by virtue of making things cheaper, it increases people's power of living, or quality of living, or life. If you go back to 1800, people worked, 98% of the world's population lived under the extreme poverty level, so like less than $1 a day. It's only 200 years ago where we were working 70 to 80 hours a week to basically barely survive and make ends meet. Even 100 years ago, life expectancy was 47. So in 1800, no country life expectancy above 40. In 1900, it was 47. And over the last 100 years, GDP per capita has about tripled. But if you look at like quality of life, it's much more than tripled because things become cheaper. Even when I was a kid, like if you want to make a long distance phone call, it's like $1 a minute. If you wanted to have a cell phone, right, like in the Ford Gecko world, you need these $3,000 cell phones and a 20-minute battery life, and it was like $5 a minute. And it was not democratized. Even taking a plane. When I was a kid, only the rich took planes. Like if we ever got on a plane, it was like in this massive event. And all these things become cheaper because of technology. And again, it's technology writ large. It's like yield management systems in the airlines. It's online booking systems in the airlines that have made these things cheaper. And so today, like air travel is cheaper, communications is cheaper, but food is cheaper. Like the percentage of your income that you spend on food has declined dramatically because of technology. And also labor productivity has increased. It used to be 100% of people were farmers in 1800. Today it's 3% of the people we actually are creating food surpluses. And so technology's deflationary power actually improves people's quality of life. So I don't think you need to think through necessarily social impact, because whatever you do by virtue of you trying to improve the net promoter score of the user experience and lowering the cost of users will be great for society. Now, I think some things are more value than others, but frankly, if you free up people's time or free up money for them to do something else, I think that's actually meaningful and valuable in its own right.
What's a easily avoidable mistake that you see a lot of entrepreneurs make in the first 1 or 2 years? Or what's something that's often overlooked in the first 1 or 2 years that can impact a long company?
So most entrepreneurs probably overestimate competitive risk. They're like, oh, this competitor is, they're the enemy of evil, and if we don't do it, they're going to take it, or they're going to kill us, and they think it's like winner takes all in the category. And so they massively overestimate competitive risk and massively underestimate execution risk. And so it's way harder to get shit done. Your company is way more likely to fail because you fought with your co-founder and you had a falling out, or you didn't deliver the right products on time. Then because some competitor has like so much more money and is doing whatever better, faster, or whatever they do. And most of these things are not land grabs. Like one common mistake is like overextending yourself. Like many of the marketplaces we launch, we'll launch in one city and like nail it before you scale it. Get the economics to work. Prove that you can be profitable in that city, in that geography, that you find the right customer acquisition channels and supply and demand side, that it really works, then go to 10 cities. If you just expand and you think it's a land grab, you're going to burn money like crazy until you figure it out. And sometimes you want to have money next year. Like maybe if things are frothy and people are throwing money at you, it's okay. Though it's a very expensive way of doing it. You're way better at like nailing it than scaling it.
Just that time now, so thank you so much for joining us today.